a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. They say you can't buy happiness, but you can buy coffee, which might make you happy. So therefore, you're buying happiness. Not all coffee has the same abilities. Only the best coffee will give you the best outcome. Organic Man coffee is the best in the universe, so it will make you happy. I get happy just thinking about it. 4501 McPherson here in Laredo, or organicmancoffeetrike.shop if you live someplace else. I'll do it anyway. Quando omni fluncus mortati. I wonder how many of y'all, my listeners, will know what that means or where it's from. My wife suggested I look into emotions that cause illness. I found out when I was mostly through doing my research and my notes that she meant spiritual causes of illness. Well, I try my best to focus the show on what folks ask, but well, I got a little off track. No, I got a lot off track, but here's the show anyway. I grew up hearing about something called psychosomatic illnesses. These folks were not really sick. They were just looking for attention. The people making these diagnoses were usually busybodies who spent their time ridiculing and deriding others. The real explanation of psychosomatic disorder is any physical condition that stress can help cause or make worse. Stress impacts our bodies in many ways and can affect several physical conditions from heart disease to eczema. The busybodies thought it was all just in their mind. It's funny when people use words that they don't really know what they mean. The medical folks tell us all about how emotions release chemicals that cause a reaction or an effect on our bodies. I lost what little confidence I had in most medical professionals when my wife wound up in the hospital. It was right in the middle of the Black Plague of 2020. I watched as doctors made their medical decisions while standing in the doorway of the room. I was yelled at by a few for not wearing my mask or covering my entire body in saran wrap so they would feel more secure, even though these same folks were covered from head to foot in protective gear and they were wearing those Darth Vader respirators. One clown looked at my wife from the hallway. He told her that she needed to watch a YouTube video, and then he charged us something like $800. The surgeon told her that she had to have her gallbladder removed. My wife asked if this was what was making her sick and was told that they didn't know for sure, but it was best to get things cut out while she was still in the hospital. Do it now or you'll have to come back later and do it. After 8 days of testing, she left the hospital with no idea what had made her sick. Our copay was astronomical. Several doctors had given her prescriptions for all kinds of drugs. Not knowing why she'd gotten sick, how could they hand out drugs to cure her? The prescriptions all went in the trash. I have more confidence in a guy with a bone through his nose than a guy in a white lab coat. In an effort to not get canceled from any more platforms, I had to be careful who I point my fingers at. I came up with a name, the Big F, to represent certain entities that look at the world population as their personal money making operation. Their goal is to keep us all sick and then charge us for their supposed cures. I think I already have two strikes against me, and I really don't want to get struck out. I did work with a doctor one night. A patient had cut his leg, and the doctor was sewing it up. The doc began talking about how, after studying the human mind for over 2,000 years, the medical professionals understood less than 3% of how things worked. There have been a few doctors who impressed me with their knowledge, their abilities. There were a whole lot more who scared me into avoiding examination rooms at all costs. You would think I would be a lot more careful when riding my bike. I have seen people going through grief so profound it caused them to become physically ill. I've seen people get so mad, a few because of me, they began to throw up. Maybe it wasn't the nicest thing on my part, but hey, when you're wrong, you're wrong. And if somebody points it out to you, you should admit it. I tend to point things out without bothering to think about maybe keeping my mouth shut. I hear people say a sound mind and a sound body. They actually have it backwards. The original saying was a sound body and a sound mind. Anxiety is like that annoying coworker you are forced to deal with. This could easily be fixed by allowing dueling once again. Folks would be a whole lot less annoying if they just might have to defend their viewpoint as well as their own lives. Long term exposure to some jackwagon will cause you to feel uneasy, which just might lead to your becoming sick. The Border Patrol had an outstanding unwritten policy. When two agents didn't get along, they would put them together so the agents could work out their differences. This led to a lot of fistfights. Agents actually rolling in the street, beating each other up because they didn't get along. And then the supervisors had the gall to pretend they had no idea that these two agents didn't like each other that much. Not willing to learn from others' mistakes, this happened over and over. A panic attack is a sudden episode of intense fear that triggers severe physical reactions when there is no real danger or apparent cause. Panic attacks can be very frightening. When panic attacks occur, you might think you're losing control, having a heart attack, or even dying. Many people have just one or two panic attacks in their entire lifetime, and the problem goes away. Perhaps when a stressful situation goes away. But if you've had recurring unexpected panic attacks and you've spent long periods of constant fear of another attack, you may have a condition called panic disorder. Although panic attacks themselves aren't life threatening, they can be frightening and significantly affect your quality of life. The first thing you need to do is retrain your body to breathe in a more efficient manner. Learn how your breathing will affect a panic attack. Numerous studies have shown that most panic attack symptoms come not from adrenaline, but from hyperventilation. Hyperventilation is when your body releases too much carbon monoxide. Try that again, carbon dioxide. My entire career as a paramedic, I was always getting those two mixed up. One, I'm not going to go into it, but it usually occurs because you're breathing too quickly. But in some cases, it can occur because you're breathing in too much oxygen. Trust me, I used to be a paramedic. The trigger for your body to inhale and exhale does not come from a need for oxygen, but it comes from the amount of carbon dioxide you still have in your blood. Many people with panic attacks either breathe fast because they're in the middle of a panic, or they try to take very deep breaths because they feel as if they need it. What makes matters worse is that one of the symptoms of hyperventilation is feeling like you can't get enough air. This causes you to naturally want to breathe faster and harder, and unfortunately, this is making hyperventilation worse. Chronic headaches and migraines are kind of an unexplained subject. Doctors have theories on what cause headaches and migraines, but they don't really know. I used to get really bad migraines, the kind that caused my vision to get blurry and I would feel sick. Light was way too bright, and the darkness wasn't dark enough. I went to an energy healer. She had me sit in a chair and then she held her hands on either side of my head. It felt like I had an actual object sticking through my brain. She would move her hands and the object felt as if it was moving. Just to add to this weird situation, she had other people come over and feel this object, and they could all feel it. They weren't putting their hands on my head, they were holding them about 2 or 3 inches from the skin. She held her hands about 3 or 4 inches from my head and then just stood there. After maybe a minute or two, this object seemed to fade away. Now, I still get migraines once in a while, but they are nothing like what they used to be. All I get now is a mild pain in the brain, which is odd since the brain doesn't have any feelings. The naysayers will never admit physical ailments can be fixed by manipulating energy by hand movements. The only drug we keep in our house is acetylsalicylic acid, better known as aspirin. It seems to me the more drugs people take, the more drugs they have to take. They are medicating the side effects of the drugs given for problems that could probably have been fixed by using natural substances. Anxiety can cause headaches, which range from dull, persistent ache to a full blown migraine. Several studies show that there is a connection between diet choice and psychological physiological behavior. Dietary choices impact a person from the moment he or she is born. It's what you put into your body that causes it to function well or bad. Research shows that consuming food that has high glycemic index can contribute to anxiety and depression. Sugar and refined carbohydrates can give your blood sugar highs and lows throughout the day, increasing anxiety, nervousness, and fatigue. This does not mean use those sugar substitutes. You'd be better off drinking Jonestown Kool-Aid. Well, maybe not that bad, but sugar substitutes are chemicals that may taste good, but they have some nasty, long lasting side effects. Consuming too many or too little calories can increase anxiety symptoms and other psychological or emotional disorders. Also, poor diet can lead to many anxiety symptoms, including moodiness, fatigue, abnormal blood sugar levels that cause nervousness and jitters. We all know that person that goes on a diet and you don't want to be near them. Too much alcohol can increase anxiety symptoms like moodiness, nervousness, and jitters. A study published by the British Journal of Psychiatry found that abstinence from alcohol is associated with a lower risk of anxiety. As for caffeine, I doubt too many of y'all out there drink nearly as much coffee as I do, and I don't get anxious about things. You can use lavender oil, which has been shown to reduce anxiety and help the body relax. A multi center, double blind, random study conducted in Germany found that silexin, an oral lavender oil capsule, was just as effective as benzodiazepine, anti anxiety medication that usually induces sedation and at a high potential for drug abuse. Be careful using diffusers if you have a dog. The vapor might be bad for them. Research also shows that using lavender oil topically or inhaling lavender can help induce calmness and relieve symptoms of anxiety like nervousness, headaches, and muscle pain. Insomnia is a bizarre problem. You want to sleep and you need to sleep, but your brain is playing reruns of Gilligan's Island or the Munsters over and over, and you're asking questions like, why didn't the professor and the movie star get married? Why did Lily not act like a normal vampire? Going out in the sunlight and things. Why did Grandpa pretend that he was Dr. Frankenstein? So then, instead of sleeping, you're laying there at night asking yourself these questions that, to begin with, they don't have any answers. And second of all, they don't need any answers. A lack of sleep can lead to physical and psychological problems. The Russian sleep experiment shows just how bad things can get. Having worked shifts for most of my adult life, I tend to not sleep when I should. I do try to shut down at about 9 o'clock at night. I get up at 5:30 so I can get my wife out the door to school. But the best laid plans of mice. Chamomile tea is believed to have flavonoids that may interact with benzodiazepine receptors in the brain that are also involved in the sleep-wake transition. Physical activity can improve sleep. It's known that moderate aerobic exercise boosts the amount of nourishing slow-wave sleep that you get. The trick is to exercise at the right time so you're able to relax at the end of the day. I got a kick out of the medical field several years ago. Some guy in a white lab coat came out and announced that exercise was good for us. As if all those folks who'd been exercising for the past few hundred years were just wasting their time until somebody studied it. By getting enough sleep, the brain gets to play out all those weird stories that become our dreams. This is like taking out the garbage once a day. Well, that's how I see it. Hospitals are notorious for waking people up to give them a sleeping pill. The whole activity is bonkers. The patient is sleeping soundly, so let's let them sleep. No, let's wake them up and give them a pill that will make them go back to sleep. Yeah, that way they can charge you for the pill, too. The hospital is the worst place to be when you're sick. Being unable to rest, your immune system is compromised, making you more susceptible to catching some nasty bug, which hospitals are full of. Some of the most virulent drug resistant diseases are found in hospitals. You also find just about every bad emotion in the halls of healing. Folks are scared of dying. They're mad at not being able to leave. They're depressed by being practically locked in their rooms, and they're worried about what is happening, what is going to happen, and how big is that bill going to be once we get out of here. My wife would never have gone into the hospital if not for her signs and symptoms looking like she was having a stroke. That's not the kind of thing you can fix at home with a home remedy. That was a long week. Depression is like carrying a heavy weight that nobody else can see. It weighs you down, slows you down, and it can have profound effect on your physical health. It can drain your energy, and no amount of sleep will seem to recharge you. Depression weakens your body's natural defenses, leaving you more susceptible to colds, flus, and other infections. We used to double back once a month. A Saturday evening, we would get off work only to have to come back to work that midnight. Theoretically, we were given 8 hours to adjust. This was provided nobody brought in any kind of a weird case at the end of the shift. Then we had to drive home, eat dinner, get to bed, wake back up, and then show back up for work. If we were lucky, we would get 1 or 2 hours of sleep. This constant change in our sleep pattern led to a lot of agents getting sick. Depression can cause changes in your diet. Some people lose their appetite entirely, while others find their appetite has been supercharged. It's bad because they start eating all the wrong kinds of food, and lots of it. It can cause your immune system to go all wonky. It can increase your risk of developing autoimmune disorders, where your body's defense system gets confused and starts attacking healthy cells. Understanding the physical impact of depression is crucial for nurturing your emotional health. It's not just about feeling sad. Depression can have real, tangible effects on your body. Due to certain huge companies, the big F, that advertise solutions to problems that most people don't even see as problems, a lot of folks will immediately turn to their doctors for some quick, easy relief. Most doctors have been trained to medicate away any and all signs and symptoms while ignoring what the underlying problem may be. The old cure your patient and lose a customer thought process. Researchers found exercise was associated with more significant improvement in depression symptoms. Running, biking, dancing, weightlifting, anything that causes the heart rate to increase and the muscles to work. You don't have to become a gym rat. Just do some hard exercises that will make you feel better about yourself. Most antidepressants are about 35 to 45% effective. After your doctor prescribes an antidepressant, they have to prescribe a second or maybe third drug to help coax the first one into working. Each of these additional medications will come with a whole host of bad side effects. Eventually, you'll wind up suffering from all kinds of side effects to a point you're more depressed than ever. A walk in the woods can be as much as 95% effective. This might be a problem if you live in a big city, but then living in a big city might be why you're depressed in the first place. I can't understand people that want to live in a ginormous city. Ugh. To me, That's unnatural. And I think to a lot of other people. Seeing as nobody can make money by prescribing a walk in the woods, certain companies shy away from these easy cures that have zero side effects. Well, you might run into Bigfoot or a mountain lion, so you could have some things happen. Just think, if you see Bigfoot, you'll have stories to tell. And if you run into a mountain lion, he'll have stories to tell. Spending time in nature is one of the best things you can do to support your mental health. After examining data from more than 900,000 residents who were born between 1985 and 2003, one study found that children who lived in neighborhoods with more green space had a reduced risk of many psychiatric disorders, including mood disorders, depression, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and substance abuse. The new problem we face today is that most kids don't use these green spaces. They spend all their time looking at a screen and they never go outside. An American Psychological Association report noted researchers believed interacting with nature may be useful clinically as a support to existing treatments for major depression. Interestingly, walking in the woods, sometimes now called forest bathing, may potentially help in recovering from trauma and PTSD. How much time in nature makes a difference? A 2019 study found that 2 hours of recreational time a week in nature, either all at once or broken up into small times, will increase your feelings of well being. It's both amazing and annoying how many commercials I see telling folks if they just feel a bit uncomfortable for any reason at all, they should run to the doctor's office and insist on being sold the latest and greatest drug to make them feel better. Better living through chemical dependency. I was working on a book one time called Shadows. It was about halfway through, and I didn't have a clue how I was going to bring the story to an end and have the good guys succeed over the evil shadow being. I was talking to my nephew, and he said that his mother, who was a full blooded Ho Chunk Indian, had told him that people that used drugs and alcohol were opening themselves up to being taken over by a shadow being. This small statement put an idea in my head on how to finish the book. Maybe it's not the best horror book ever written, but it's not the worst one either. Let's just say it's not for kids. Anger is something most of us get to deal with on a daily basis. I might have some anger issues. If the idiots out there would behave themselves, I wouldn't get mad so often. Mostly while I'm driving. I try to explain this to my wife, but it's like a switch gets thrown and I get mad. I know that there are drugs designed to make me calmer and more of a B type personality, or I can simply accept the fact that there are some idiots out there and I blow my top and I yell and scream and then it goes away like magic. Anger can lead to some internal difficulties. It causes a physiological response. Why in the heck do these words start with pH? A physiological response which can do damage to the body. When I get mad, it only lasts a few seconds, whereas if I just sit there and pretend all is well, I begin to get madder and quicker and over less world changing things. By getting mad, yelling, shaking my fist at the world, then I'm back to my normal weird self. The experts pretend doctors and drug companies can fix problems like anger. About the only thing they can do is transform an A type personality into a B. In my humble and weird opinion, the jobs that I've done over the years are best done by A's. The guys I worked with at the fire department were either hard chargers or they were useless at an emergency. Combat units in the Army are no place for B types. The Border Patrol is a mixed bag, of course. The A types would charge into bad situations and either win the day or wind up on the carpet explaining why they did what they did. The B types tended to avoid controversy, and this led to them getting promoted. The front office liked the folks who stayed out of fights. This doesn't mean that they stayed out of trouble, it just meant that they never got into a fist fight. They did get into trouble in different ways. We used to have a saying, I hope it's gone away. We used to say, screw up, move up. That's because a lot of B types were in the front office and they kind of attracted other B types. Sudden anger is one thing, but chronic anger is a thing that does need fixing. Anybody who goes through life mad at the world just because, I don't get it. I've worked with people who seemed to be the happiest when they were mad. Chronic anger can lead to heart attacks, strokes, high blood pressure, etc. Plus, the person is not enjoying their life and nobody's enjoying being around them. Being, being, breathing is a natural phenomenon that can help people deal with chronic anger. When you gently exhale, a signal is transmitted to the brain and the body, which aids in relaxing. Even while not exercising, people may learn to breathe deeply, not to the point you hyperventilate. That's why they say you have to practice. People should try to set out 10 uninterrupted minutes per day of simply breathing. I know we've been doing it our whole lives. You would think we'd be good at it, but not everybody is. You want to sit in a peaceful, quiet environment, no music, no cell phone, no barking dogs, maybe a cat sitting in your lap, provided he sits and doesn't decide to knead the biscuits. Dimming the lights and adopting a comfortable position can also reduce an individual's anxiety level. I do this, but I have to remember to breathe before I start vocalizing my anger and shaking my fist at people. If you've ever seen me driving by you shaking my fist, I'm sorry. Healthy eating and lifestyle are the key to dealing with chronic anger. As anger is a form of negative energy, you need to work on bringing positive changes to your life. In addition, healthy eating can help improve your physical and mental health. Sufficient sleep and healthy eating can positively affect your mood and control chronic anger. A nutritious diet can revitalize your mind and body, while medicating can help you. There I go again. Meditating. I read my notes several times before doing the show, but I see words that aren't there. Meditating can help you achieve serenity and peace. You don't have to sit in the lotus position and go, oh, like the hippies used to do. Just sit in a quiet place, relax, and clear your mind. Praying is asking for something, and meditating is listening for the answers. In addition, a healthy lifestyle can help you be more connected to your body and can help control anger. Drugs and alcohol can lead to angry outbursts. It lowers your threshold and allows the inner demons to get out. Not just illicit drugs, but those handed out by the doctors as well. It may also let the demons in. Folks who allow their rage to control them lose their safeguards. Their shields are down if you're a Star Trek fan. Should a person become so enraged they lose their humanity, then really bad things can happen. I've heard from a few investigators how the suspect in a homicide said he or she had felt as if something was controlling them from outside their body. They were more observers as to what was happening with their hands than actually in control, just because they got really mad. The anger managing drug doctors are quick to prescribe, which usually have opposite effects with sometimes the same outcomes. That was a mouthful. The person loses their ability to have emotions, which leads to them being open to something sneaking in. Fear is used to keep us from doing stupid things too many times. I'm afraid I'll break my shoulder again, so I try not to do too many stupid stunts on my bike. I try. You ever watch Berm Peaks? Uh, Seth Olivo. He swore he wasn't going to do any more stupid stunts at the beginning of the year. I guess that was his New Year's Eve resolution. And then he goes and does stunts. Weird stunts. I like watching his show, though. Check it out, Berm Peaks. It's on YouTube. Anger affects your stomach, leading to problems like acid reflux and stomach ulcers. Ulcers can also be caused by bacteria, but that's another show. It's as if your anger is setting your digestive system on fire, leaving you with a burning sensation that's hard to ignore. The folks handing out drugs like Halloween candy have come up with a list of bad emotions: anger, sadness, anxiety, and depression. They also have some conditions that they tell us need to be medicated to prevent our weird behavior: ADHD, PTSD, insomnia, restless leg syndrome. And the funny thing is, at the end of every one of these commercials, they have that real fast list of things that might just kill you for taking those drugs. Each week, a new commercial comes out for a condition or a syndrome that I've never heard of, but absolutely positively has to be fixed by seeing your doctor. People develop weird skin problems that are usually caused by things they eat or consume. Alcohol and smoking causes all kinds of skin problems. Instead of telling people to knock off the unhealthy intake, they wind up with some potion they found upon some wall, in some unholy bathroom, in some ungodly hole. A task 1157 should get that reference. If not, I'll try to mention it next week. Okay, it was a Steppenwolf song. Doctors receive about 11 hours of training in nutrition. The rest of the time, they're learning about pills. The fuel we put into our bodies that makes us function receives only 11 hours of teaching. Instead of looking at what might cause skin problems, they prescribe some pill to make the problem go away. We didn't have ADHD when I was in school. We did have kids, like me, that found the hole sitting in a desk listening to the teacher speak, and the teacher always sounded like the teacher from the Peanuts show. Well, it was just unmanageable. There were windows along one wall with things going on the other side that were far more entertaining than the subject at hand. I had little interest in history or social studies. I was planning on going into construction. A lot of the teachers would come out with, "You'd better learn this so you can get into college, or else you're going to get drafted and shipped off to Vietnam." I used to hear that every day. The Army was a lot more entertaining and informative than high school. I never went to Vietnam. The war ended before I turned 18. The trouble I had in school was not ADHD, it was boredom. I was stuck in the middle of a bunch of hippies and drug users as my classmates and some of the teachers. It was hard to tell who was who. The girls and the guys all looked kind of the same: long hair, dirty clothes, t shirts, blue jeans. This included the teachers as well. To treat this new and wonderful thing called ADHD, medical professionals hand out not tranquilizers, but stimulants. The kid is bouncing off the wall, so let's crank him up a bit. Putting out fires with gasoline. Maybe what they need is something to stimulate the brain and cause a feeling of interest and excitement. Shop class was the refuge of those of us who hated math. I never considered a job working inside. I wanted to work with my hands. How many kids with ADHD actually just need some physical training? Am I the only one that sees a correlation between removing shop classes from schools and ADHD coming into vogue? Ah, yes, there was gym class. Physical education, they called it. All we did was play basketball or football. It was the coach's way of sorting out the best picks for the teams. We learned zero about physical well being. It helped not at all that the coaches all needed to go on a diet. The word corpulent comes to mind. The knee jerk reaction for most folks in medication. TV ads bombard us with images of people dragging themselves through life until they discover the magic pill that miraculously moves them into a garden. They're shown participating in sporting events and they're performing music on stage. Ask your doctor if Brextra is right for you. Oh, yes, that drug was pulled from the market in 2005. They discovered it was causing folks to have strokes and heart attacks. Psychiatric medications don't always work because brains function differently, and disorders can be mild, moderate, or severe. Then they don't know really what the drug is going to do. They need more study and less treatment. Add to this that many folks no longer trust doctors to prescribe the right medications. The folks that have schizophrenia, well, I don't think they trust doctors at all, most of them. These non drug treatments for mental health disorders run the gamut from taking herbs, nutritional supplements, to taking a walk in the park, doing something physical. Of course, there are lifestyle changes for better mental health as well. According to a 2022 statistics, over 23% of U.S. adults are living with mental illness, yet only half of them are being treated for it. I say the folks doing these statistics are just making it up, but that's just my opinion. In order to actually know the amount of mental illness, The people doing the study would have to test every person in the country. I understand statistics. I know how they do things. Keep in mind, a lot of statisticians are very careful who they invite into their studies. If you go to a NASCAR rally and ask folks what they think about electric vehicles, you're going to come away saying that most people don't like EVs. Let's just say there's a lot of folks out there with some kind of a mental issue. The National Center for Biotechnology, let's try that again. The National Center for Biotechnology Information reported selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, better known as SSRIs, only work some of the time. They found that SSRIs did help improve symptoms in a whopping 20% of the patients, which was less than the number of people who received help using a placebo. The brain imaging work at Amen Clinic has shown that in cases of ADHD, where there's too much activity in the brain, a typical prescribed stimulant medication can only make matters worse sometimes. Medications also come with many potential side effects. For example, SSRIs, commonly prescribed for anxiety and depression, can have a number of unwanted side effects, including sexual dysfunction, nausea, dizziness, drowsiness, joint and muscle pain, stomach upset, diarrhea, headaches, skin rashes, and insomnia. These drugs come with what is known as a black box warning placed in the package insert. It says, risk of suicidal thoughts, hostility, agitation in children, teens, and young adults may result. Some medications, such as benzodiazepines, typically prescribed for anxiety disorders, not only come with side effects, they're also addictive. I am not playing doctor here. I only want folks, y'all that choose to listen to me, to do some more work. If a doctor hands you a piece of paper with scrawling on it that only a pharmacist can understand, that's because it's in a code. That's why it's unreadable. Ask, what are the side effects? Is there some other treatment possible? If the doctor gives you the look, it's time you need to find a new doctor. If the doctor won't tell you, ask the pharmacist. Pharmacists learn everything there is to know about most, not all, but most of the drugs that they sell. Have you ever seen a drug insert that was intentionally left blank? I have. You can search for natural treatments for most mild to moderate mental problems. You'll have to wade through a ton of drug company pages that are shoved into each and every search engine. Once you find a couple, compare the information from a few to figure out what may be best for you and what is just some clown trying to sell a book. Several web pages did insert a disclaimer. It said, be sure to discuss any natural remedies with your medical doctor or mental health professional before making any changes in your current treatment plan. There are naturopathic and holistic doctors out there. You just have to search for them. It is not recognized in the mental health field that dietary intervention is a key aspect of the treatment of individuals living with mental disorders. It is now recognized. I said that completely wrong. It is now recognized in the mental health field that dietary intervention is a key aspect in the treatment of individuals living with mental disorders. A 2022 review of 46 studies that examine dietary interventions in the treatment of mental health conditions, including severe mental illness, depression, and anxiety, found positive effects on mental health outcomes by changing their diets. I've noticed a lot of podcasters that do extensive editing. They'll chop out any time that they stammer or any time they pronounce a word incorrectly. They'll just chop that little bit out and shove the two halves together. And I've also noticed that a lot of times they'll accidentally repeat part of the show when they stick them together. So I don't do that. If I make a mistake, well, that's me. Eating a diet rich in fruit, vegetables, lean proteins, fermented food, and healthy fat can support healthy brain function and reduce symptoms of mental health conditions. A 2016 study showed a strong association between the number of fruits and vegetables you habitually consume and your level of happiness. Basically, the more fruit and vegetables, not one or two, but 6 or 8, the happier you will be. Just eating fruit and vegetables isn't enough. You have to stop with the bad stuff. Eliminate foods that are contributing to health issues, including cutting out foods with high amounts of added sugar. That's high amounts. It's amazing how much sugar some companies dump into their food. Food additives, artificial sweeteners, refined carbohydrates, and unhealthy fats. Some say you should stop with dairy products. Others say gluten is bad for you. These two things people have been consuming for thousands of years, and now suddenly they're bad for you. Remember when eggs were bad? Then eggs were good. Smoking was good. Now smoking is bad. It's the processing that takes place in these foods that you have to be worried about. There's nothing wrong with bread and there's nothing wrong with milk as long as it hasn't been processed into some nasty, horrible chemical concoction. I do a lot of reading at the grocery store. Gee, I wish these were novels instead of ingredients, but no, I do a lot of reading at the grocery store. It takes me forever to get from one end of HEB to the other. I'll whip out my phone and I'll look up certain contents to see exactly what is that I'm looking at. If I can't find it or I don't like it, it goes back on the shelf. A 2019 French study found that consumption of ultra-processed foods go up, depression symptoms go up as well. A nutritional neuroscience study suggests there is a link between artificial sweetener, aspartame, and severe neuropsychological symptoms, including anxiety and depression. I got very far from what my wife had suggested. She wanted to know more about spiritual side of illness and disease. Like I said, I had most of my notes already written when I realized my mistake. I am now starting to wander back to her request. In shamanic healing, the roots of many illnesses are traced back to ethereal worlds, the unseen, the sources from where these ailments draw their power to impact us. Merely addressing the physical symptoms of diseases with medication or hoping for the best is not sufficient for true healing. To facilitate genuine recovery, one must delve into and address the underlying causes of ailments. Shamans view the origins of diseases through a unique lens, identifying 3 primary causes that have nothing to do with microbes, bacteria, or viruses. They address negative internal status as a culprit. These harmful emotional conditions often emerge in response to negative or traumatic experiences in our lives. It emphasizes the importance of healing not just the body, but the spirit and the mind, acknowledging the interaction connected between our internal emotional state and our physical health. Disharmony arises when life seems to lose its essence or when a significant connection to life is severed. This disruption often triggers a deep sense of loss and emptiness. Disharmony results from life altering events that shake our core. It can manifest subtly or strike dramatically, altering the courses of our lives. Losing a job not only affects you financially, but it impacts your identity and your sense of purpose. When I retired, I felt lost. I handed over my gun, my badge, and suddenly I had to be escorted around the building. I was no longer part of the family that I had belonged to for well over 26 years. Such experience of disempowerment or loss significantly affects our energetic matrix, rendering us vulnerable to illness. Fortunately, I had already begun preparing myself mentally and emotionally for this change. I did feel depressed and directionless, no longer had a reason to get out of bed in the morning. It's a good thing I have cats. They insist on being fed in the morning. I do get up Monday through Friday and sometimes Saturday early to get my wife out the door so that she can go teach, make her lunch, make her coffee, and things like that. I brush my teeth and I shave every morning, make the bed. I clean up any messes that were left over from the night before. I am now patrolling the house instead of the border. Disharmony isn't just a state of mind, it has tangible effects on your physical body as well. Fear is the second fundamental cause of spiritual disease, wielding a significant impact on overall well being. Have you noticed just how much fear mongering there is on TV today? Every few days, a new and exciting disease is announced that is going to make the Black Plague look like a picnic. News folks interview medical professionals who tell us about piles of dead bodies in countries that we've never heard of. They tell us this flu season is going to be biblical. Politicians tell us that Social Security is on the verge of drying up. Meanwhile, some country on the far side of the planet is going to blow us to smithereens. The Weather Channel shows scenes from storms from years ago so that we remember just how deadly weather can be. Chronic fear is a relentless consuming emotion, and it can dramatically increase susceptibility to illness. This is because persistent fear erodes a person's sense of well being, which is the cornerstone of history. When this foundation is compromised, it directly impairs the efficiency of our immune system. A weakened immune system leaves the body vulnerable, essentially opening the door to various health issues. Fear breeds unrest and disharmony, which in turn fuels further fear. The vicious cycle intensively strains the body's natural defenses and the energetic matrix, making illness an almost unavoidable outcome. The connection between fear, disharmony, and illness is not a new revelation. 500 years ago, the Renaissance physician Paracelsus acknowledged the power of fear, noting the fear of the disease is more dangerous than the disease itself. Most drugs, once again, will only mask the problems, eliminating the signs and symptoms without eliminating the fear. In today's world, you can't get rid of things to be afraid of. There are people that want to kill us just because we think differently from them. Add to this, there are politicians who want to invite these folks into our country because it's a part of the master plan. I did a show about the master plan. It was called The Puppet Masters. It might still be available provided those people haven't pulled it. Weather is being manipulated by people who think they have the answers. The trouble is, if you turn a hurricane in a direction away from the folks you like, it is going to wind up in another part of the country, wiping out other people. A lot of folks call this just a conspiracy theory. Weather manipulation is now called geoengineering. That's newspeak from 1984. You can't get rid of things to fear, but you can do something about how you respond to it. Courage is fear that went to school. The Black Plague of 2020 was kind of devastating until I started doing research. I read a lot and I listened to a lot, and I found out that some things just didn't add up. The news was giving us 2 plus 2 and telling us that this was 5. I did a few experiments of my own, and I discovered a lot of what we were being fed was garbage. Once I knew more about what was going on, the fear went away, only to be replaced by anger. I never said I was perfect. Oh, I got mad at some folks. People were getting sick, but a lot of them were getting sick from fear and not from the plague. More was being done to spread fear than to cure the problem. The, under, the understanding of health is crucial in both preventing and treating illness. Aligning with wisdom of traditional indigenous healers and of very few modern medical practitioners. Soul loss is seen as a grave spiritual ailment, often linked to premature death or serious physical illness. It is essentially an injury to the very essence of a person's life, often triggered by traumatic experiences. Soul loss is not something you can go see a common doctor for. I imagine they just give you some uppers or some downers and call it good. Recognizing and addressing soul loss requires a holistic approach to transcending traditional medical treatment. In the early 1990s, Time magazine highlighted a cover story saying that depression in America involved 30% of the population, and they were all said to be taking antidepressants. Was somebody lying? Today, that number is said to be 40%. Addressing soul loss involves spiritual and emotional healing, fostering a journey towards wholeness and wellness. Military folks who come home from battle can take what's in a bottle, or they can try natural cures. Horseback riding is said to be a great cure. Working on a farm, meditating, using the mind to help cure the mind. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I am not a doctor, and I don't want anyone to think I have all the answers. I do want you to understand that most medical professionals don't have all the answers either. If my wife is watching, I'll be coming straight home after the meeting. If you don't get that reference, then how about Quando omni fluncus moritati, which means when all else fails, play dead. I started watching the Red Green Show on YouTube again. Brings back some weird memories from the 90s. I am a man, and I can change if I have to, I guess. Imagine my cousins are probably the only two that'll get that reference. If you enjoyed tonight's show, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell people you don't even like that they should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And if you don't like the show, what the heck are you doing listening to me?
Are you coming to the tree where they've strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.